The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune above my head as I arranged the returned books on the circulation desk. Tuesday afternoons at the Millbrook Public Library were always quiet, the kind of silence that most people found uncomfortable, but I have learned to treasure. My name is Elena Vasquez, and for the past 7 years, I had been the head librarian in this small Massachusetts town, invisible to most, forgettable to all. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 34, I had perfected the art of being unremarkable. My dark hair stayed perpetually pulled back in a simple bun. My clothing consisted of cardigans in muted colors, and my voice rarely rose above a whisper. The patrons saw exactly what I wanted them to see: a mousy woman who lived for the Dewey Decimal System and probably owned 12 cats. In reality, I owned no cats, and the most dangerous thing in my apartment wasn't pet hair. It was the encrypted laptop hidden behind a false wall in my bedroom closet. The bell above the entrance chimed, and I glanced up from my cataloging to see 2 figures in dark suits scanning the reading area. Federal agents. I knew the type instantly, the way they moved, the systematic visual sweep of the room, the barely concealed bulge of concealed weapons beneath their jackets. My pulse quickened, but my expression remained placid. I had been expecting this day. For 7 years, can I help you? I asked, my voice carrying its usual timid quality as they approached the desk. The taller agent, a woman with sharp features and calculating eyes, pulled out a leather credential case. Agent Sarah Chun, FBI. This is Agent Marcus Rodriguez. We'd like to speak with Elena Vasquez. That's me. I set down my book scanner with deliberate care, buying myself a moment to assess the situation. Is everything all right? Agent Chun studied my face with the intensity of someone trained to read deception. We need to discuss your previous employment, Ms. Vasquez, specifically your work with Meridian Technologies. The name hit me like ice water, though I kept my expression neutral. Meridian Technologies, my former life, buried under 7 years of small-town anonymity. The defense contractor that had employed me as a cryptographic specialist until everything fell apart in spectacular, classified fashion. I'm afraid I don't understand, I said, reaching for the reserve book cart to keep my hands busy. I've worked here for 7 years. Before that, I was a graduate student at MIT. Agent Rodriguez, a stocky man with kind eyes that didn't match his profession, leaned forward. Ms. Vasquez, we have records showing you held a top-secret clearance and worked on classified encryption systems for the Department of Defense. We're not here to cause trouble, we need your help. The afternoon reading group, 3 elderly women who came every Tuesday to discuss romance novels, looked up from their corner table with undisguised curiosity. Mrs. Patterson, the town's unofficial gossip coordinator, was practically vibrating with excitement at this unexpected drama in her otherwise predictable week. Perhaps we could speak privately, I suggested, gesturing toward my office. I don't want to disturb our patrons. Agent Chun nodded, and I led them past the reference section toward a small room lined with filing cabinets and computer manuals. As I closed the door, I caught Mrs. Patterson craning her neck to watch us disappear, already composing the story she'd tell at the grocery store within the hour. Ms. Vasquez, Agent Chun began once we were seated. 3 weeks ago, someone penetrated the Pentagon's classified network using an encryption protocol that matches your signature work from 2016. The same protocol that went missing when you disappeared from Meridian. There it was. The truth I had buried under years of library finds and book recommendations was clawing its way to the surface. I clasped my hands in my lap, a gesture of nervousness that happened to hide the slight tremor in my fingers. I left Meridian after my security clearance was revoked, I said carefully. There was an incident, The incident where you discovered your team leader was selling encryption keys to foreign intelligence services. Agent Rodriguez interrupted gently. The incident where you gathered evidence for 18 months before, reporting it, and were subsequently fired for failing to report suspicious activity in a timely manner. My carefully constructed facade cracked slightly. They needed a scapegoat. Marcus Kellerman had been selling secrets for 2 years while I was building the encryption systems he was compromising. When I finally had enough evidence to prove it, Meridian decided it was easier to blame the quiet girl who didn't play office politics. Agent Chun's expression softened marginally. Kellerman died in federal prison 6 months ago. But before he died, he told us something interesting. He said the encryption protocol everyone thought was his masterpiece, the one that's now being used against us, was actually your design. He stole it from your personal files. I stared at them, the weight of 7 years crashing down around me. The Erebus protocol, I whispered. You called it Erebus? Agent Rodriguez asked, pulling out a tablet. After the primordial deity of darkness in Greek mythology, I explained automatically. It was supposed to be unbreakable, a quantum-resistant encryption system that could protect our most sensitive communications for decades. I developed it during my off hours, thinking it might be my contribution to national security. Instead, it became a weapon in enemy hands, Agent Chun said bluntly. Someone is using your encryption system to hide communications, planning attacks on American interests. We've intercepted fragments of the traffic, but we can't decode it. We need the architect. I stood up abruptly, walking to the small window that overlooked Main Street. Below, life continued its predictable rhythm, teenagers skateboarding past the diner, the postman making his afternoon rounds, Mrs. Patterson emerging from the library with a stack of books and an expression of barely contained excitement. You want me to break my own encryption, I said without turning around. We want you to serve your country, Agent Chun replied. The way you tried to do 7 years ago, before bureaucracy and politics got in the way. I turned back to face them. And for the first time since they'd arrived, I let my true self show through the librarian facade. My posture straightened, my voice gained confidence, and my eyes sharpened with the analytical focus that had once made me one of the Pentagon's most promising cryptographers. The Erebus protocol wasn't just an encryption system, I said. It was a cipher that learned and evolved. By now, after 7 years of development, breaking it wouldn't just require the original architect. It would require someone who understood the psychological framework behind its creation. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. Meaning? Meaning, I continued, already seeing the mathematical possibilities unfold in my mind. Whoever is using it has probably modified it significantly. To decrypt their communications, I'd need to think like them, predict their modifications, and essentially reverse engineer my own work as if I were meeting it for the first time. Agent Chun smiled for the first time since entering the library. So you'll help us? I looked around my small office, at the community bulletin board, covered with reading program announcements, at the photos of library events where I'd helped local kids discover the magic of books, at the simple life I'd built from the ashes of my former career. I'll need access to a secure facility with quantum computing capabilities, I said. And I want full immunity for any actions I take in service to this investigation. I won't be anyone's scapegoat again. Done, Agent Chun said immediately. And I want to finish my shift, I added. Mrs. Henderson is coming in at 4 to return her audiobooks, and she's 93. She shouldn't have to deal with a locked library. Agent Rodriguez actually laughed. You want to complete your library duties before helping us prevent a potential national security crisis? I straightened my cardigan with deliberate precision. Agent Rodriguez, I've spent 7 years learning that small acts of responsibility matter as much as grand gestures. Mrs. Henderson has been coming to this library every Tuesday for 20 years. Today won't be the exception, no matter what. Crisis is unfolding in Washington. The two agents exchanged glances, and I could see them reassessing their assumptions about the quiet librarian they'd come to recruit. Besides, I added with a slight smile, if we're dealing with the Erebus Protocol, we'll be working for weeks, possibly months. A few extra hours won't change the timeline, but it will preserve the trust this community has placed in me. Agent Chun nodded slowly. We'll wait. And they did. For the next 2 hours, federal agents sat in my office while I helped patrons find books, processed returns, and answered questions about our upcoming poetry reading. Mrs. Henderson arrived exactly at 4, as predicted, and I helped her select 3 new mystery audiobooks, while 2 of the FBI's finest watched through my office window. As closing time approached, I methodically shut down the circulation computers, turned off the photocopier, and ensured all the reading areas were tidy for tomorrow. The agents observed this ritual with growing respect, perhaps beginning to understand that the precision they needed from me professionally was the same attention to detail I brought to everything in my life. At exactly 5:30, I locked the library's front door and turned to face Agents Chen and Rodriguez on the front steps. I need to make one stop, I told them. My apartment. There's something I need to retrieve. 15 minutes later, in my modest bedroom, I pressed a hidden switch behind my bookshelf. A section of the wall slid back, revealing the encrypted laptop I'd kept for 7 years, not out of nostalgia, but because some bridges shouldn't be completely burned. Insurance? Agent Chun asked. Preparation, I corrected, closing the hidden compartment. I always suspected this day would come. Marcus Kellerman was too greedy and too careless to keep my work buried forever. As we drove toward Boston and the secure facility where I'd spend the next phase of my life, I watched Millbrook disappear in the rearview mirror. The quiet town where Elena Vasquez, librarian, had lived peacefully for 7 years was giving way to something more complex, a place where Dr. Elena Vasquez, cryptographer, would have to emerge from her carefully constructed shell. Agent Rodriguez, driving while Agent Chun made phone calls, caught my eye in the mirror. Any regrets about leaving the library life behind? I considered the question as we merged onto the highway. I'm not leaving it behind, I said finally. I'm just adding another chapter. The best libraries contain both quiet study areas and rare book collections, places for everyday needs and extraordinary discoveries. I've learned that life works the same way. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patterson. Elena dear, I hope everything is all right. The whole town is talking about those government agents. We're all praying for you. I smiled, typing back. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. I'm helping with a work project. I'll be back to recommend more romance novels soon. It wasn't entirely a lie. I would be back, though probably not as the same person who left. The woman returning to Millbrook would be someone who had reconciled her two identities, the brilliant cryptographer who had tried to serve her country, and the dedicated librarian who had found peace and service to her community. But first, I had an encryption protocol to break. My encryption protocol. The Erebus protocol that had been stolen from me 7 years ago was about to meet its creator again. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone else control the narrative. As the Boston skyline appeared on the horizon, I opened my laptop for the first time in 7 years. The screen flickered to life, displaying lines of code I had written in another lifetime, mathematical poetry that had been corrupted and weaponized in my absence. Hello, old friend, I whispered to the screen. Time to come home. Agent Chun turned from her phone call. What was that? Nothing, I replied, my fingers already moving across the keyboard with remembered muscle memory. Just saying goodbye to one life and hello to another. The quiet librarian was still there, would always be there. But now she had company, the cryptographer who had never really gone away. Just waited patiently behind the circulation desk for the right moment to resurface. Some secrets are worth keeping. Others are worth revealing when the time is right. This was my time. 3 months later, the Erebus protocol was successfully decrypted, leading to the disruption of a major espionage network. Dr. Elena Vasquez returned to Millbrook as both head librarian and consultant to the Department of Defense. Mrs. Patterson still thinks the whole thing was terribly romantic, though she's never been entirely clear on the details. The library's Tuesday afternoon reading group now includes discussions of both romance novels and cybersecurity, because some communities are strong enough to hold space for all their members' hidden talents. And Elena Vasquez learned that the most powerful encryption of all might just be the ability to be authentically yourself in a world that often demands conformity.